Hi everybody, it's Katie, the messy gardener, the real messy gardener. I'm out in my front yard today and I thought I would do a plant profile of the lupine. Those tall blue and pink flowers towering above their leaves there. They have several flowers on a stalk, pink, blue. This is the lupine, the Russell hybrid mix lupine. Mix just means all the different colors. Russell is the name of the man who hybridized it and developed this form of the lupine. We'll talk more about him in a minute. You know me, I love the history behind things. This is a Lupinus polyphyleus. It is a perennial in zones 4 to 8. Has to be a winter annual anywhere further south, like South Florida, South Texas, anywhere where it's hot. California, Southern California, does not do well during hot nights. There's no cool down, and that's what they need. They can deal with heat, they just don't like not getting a break. So anyways, it gets to 3.5 to 5 feet tall. The leaves are palmate, which is right. I'm sorry, I can't hardly see. But anyways, it's palmate. Has anywhere from 5 to 25 leaflets on a leaf. You see here where the leaves come off the stalk, there's like a little hole here, a little indentation. What's really cool about this is that when it rains or you water, that little indentation captures a drop of water, and then when the sun hits it, it just sparkles like it's a diamond in a brooch. It's really cool. Its width at maturity is anywhere from 18 to 24 inches wide. The natural color is blue, but it has been developed into many, many other colors. It blooms in the late spring and early summer. The bloom time is about 3 to 5 weeks long. And then they make these lovely little seed pods that are so cool. So cool. Luca. I'm going to have to yell at my dog, sorry. He's really driving me batty today. He has to bark at shadows. But anyways, on to the next part. When you want to germinate these and plant the seeds, get them started, you take the seeds and you soak them from 24 to 48 hours to get that hard seed coat to break open. If you don't want to do that, you can rub the seed between sandpaper and just, scratch it so it breaks that seed coat a little easier. I find soaking the easiest because you plop them in, you forget about it, 2 days later you come back and there's, you can see some of the roots sticking out and you're like, oh, it works. And then once it's germinated and you see a little bit of root coming out, stick it in the dirt about 1/4 inch down. Cover it up because dark does aid in the rest of the growth of the embryo plant coming out. The growth habit is tightly packed flowers, and they bloom from the bottom up. They like full sun is the best. That's how you get the best flowers. But if you live in an area where, it's a little warm for them and you notice starting to wilt, or, well, you can't really move these guys, but it's going to be too warm for them in one spot, and you're right on that cusp of that border of when they do good and when they don't. Just put them in a place that gets some afternoon sun. Give them a little bit of a break. These ladies, they love their full sun though, but they are sensitive to a certain amount. After a certain point, they just, not good. All right, so when you water, you want to water evenly. Keep it moist until the roots are well established. It is likes loose sandy soil. Here comes a truck. Hey, I live in the country. What can I say? What can I say? I live in the country. All right. Anyways, it likes loose sandy soil. But if you do have clay, like I do, You have to make sure you loosen up the soil. I loosen it up and I add some composted material, dried leaves, dried grass, cut grass, whatever, you know, or go to my compost pile, whatever. Chicken poo from my coop that's been aged, I throw in there a little bit once in a while. You can collect the seed. It's very easy. You wait till these seed pods turn black, but don't wait too long because they'll open up and spread the seed everywhere. They pop open. So when they turn black and they feel dry, you pull them and open up and just shuck them like peas. And you can either start the seed right away by soaking it. If you do that, keep it outside, as it does need that cold air to set its biological clock, if you will, saying, hey, I don't come up yet. I don't come up until it's cold, then it's warm. So we have to sometimes imitate that by putting the seeds in the fridge, sealed up, you know, good and tight so they don't get any moisture in there. But if you can't plant them right away, stick them in the fridge. Put them in a jar, baby food jar, a jelly jar, something. I have mine in an old cookie tin. I put all my seeds in and seal them up and stick them on the bottom shelf of the fridge. Or in jars. My sunflowers, I have so many sunflowers, I had to put them in a jar by themselves. Okay, so this plant is in the pea family, and it is a nitrogen fixer. So that means this plant has the ability to take nitrogen from the air, process it, and then release what it doesn't need into the soil for other plants, thereby improving the soil. Now, I have not seen or heard of a very long-lived lupin, so, you know, in some ways that's good because it'll improve the soil, and when this one dies off, you can put another one in there or something else, and it'll already have improved soil, which is kind of awesome. It does have a very deep taproot, very deep, long taproot. It does not like to be moved. Do not move her. Once she's in her place, she stays there. She does not like to be divided. You know, some plants, you know, like my daisies, they get so big, they start having a hollow area in the center because it's just spreading out. So that's when you got to divide them, right? Dig them up and stick them somewhere else. We can't do that with lupins, as they have a long taproot, and they do not like that. Because of that long taproot, they are also good, especially in clay soil, to help break up that soil compaction. So they do have a job. They make the soil better. They break up the compaction of soil. And they're also beautiful. Very majestic and pretty. So like I said, this one is 3 years old. Well, there's 6 of them here, 5 or 6 of them here. They're 3 years old. Second year blooming. So the best way to propagate these plants is through seed. The easiest, best way is through seed. You can take some cuttings at the base of the plant in the spring if you want to try to do a vegetative cutting. It's easier for me just to pick the seeds. They grow so easy. So it's not even, to me, it's not even worth that effort, you know, to have to do the cutting. I just like the seeds. Okay. The pros to these plants is that they draw in a lot of pollinators. Bumblebees, honeybees, butterflies. I've seen my hummingbirds over. I have so many hummingbirds, guys. Oh my gosh. Hummingbirds are over here. A lot of butterflies. I've been getting a lot of tiger swallowtails. He's over there somewhere. Can't quite see him. Otherwise, I'd grab him on camera. So they're really good for pollinators, and you know, and I can always use the extra pollinators because as of right now, I've pretty much had to hand pollinate my pear. I didn't this year, so I only got like 3 little pears on there this year. So anyway, so yeah, we are planning on getting some honeybees eventually, but we'll see. All right, so the pros are that it brings in pollinators. It says it's deer resistant. Baloney. They might not come back and eat it, but they did eat one. I eat a couple of the flowers off right away. You know, but they didn't come back for more. They're easy to grow from seed, and they are self-sowing. You know, they drop their seed, and, you know, you'll find a volunteer the next year or so, which I think is always cool. I have not had that happen because I have such ferocious weeds right now. And so they pretty much choke anything out. Or I have to nurse, I have to know it's there, and so I can keep it where the weeds won't kill it. But like I said, I do a lot of my own digging, and, you know, gotta have mercy on whatever plant's there that it's not supposed to be, and off it goes. But yeah, I have not run across any of mine self-sowing. Let's put it that way. Alrighty. In the garden, it makes a very strong vertical statement. It looks good in groups. You could use it as cut flowers. It wows people in cut flowers, especially if you get it when they're real still close together and not 100% opened all the way. Oh my gosh, they're gorgeous. They are good for adding up, you know, filling a hole in a bright, sunshiny area that you can't get anything else to grow. They do good there. As long as you're not in that super hot nighttime areas. She can handle hot during the day. She can't handle it at night. She has to be able to have a respite from it. The cons are, you can't transplant. They wither in super duper hot heat. I have yet have mine wither, but I only have 100 degrees for maybe a week. And they tend to be short-lived. Like I said, I have not had any personal experience with how short-lived they are. But you know, it's okay because they're going to fertilize. There goes the butterfly. You never know what you're going to see outside. Okay. Alrighty. So, that does have a few pests. She has aphids, and she also can get powdery mildew. There are plenty of insecticidal soaps, neem oil, things like that. Ladybugs, get yourself some ladybugs. And get yourself some praying mantis. They will take care of those too. And the powdery mildew, you know, good airflow between plants, which of course, you know, I blow out of the water because mine are so tightly packed. But if you start noticing that problem, that might be something you might want to look into, is not planting them packs together. I have that issue with some of my late ripening crops in my garden. They'll get mildewy because we just get so damp and wet. Here comes another truck, I think. Just warning you. Yep, it's a truck. That's all right. We live in the country for a reason. Alrighty. All right. So in these bean seeds here, the lupin seeds, they're called lupin beans. Lupin beans. Now, not this particular plant, okay? Not this particular Lupinus polyphyleus, this garden lupin by George Russell, is not edible. Other species are and have been eaten for 3,000 years in the Mediterranean. And they found evidence of 6,000 years ago of them being eaten in the Andes in South America. They are still eaten today in, not this particular one, like I said, not this particular species, but the, let's see, where's the species? Augustine folius. Augustine folius is eaten in Portugal, Spain, Greece, and Italy. The white lupin, or Lupinus albius, is what is used in Europe, and it's they're brined like pickles. You can eat them with the skin or without the skin on them. And in Egypt, they're a street food that you can buy. They're soaked. The seeds are soaked in a couple different times. Or I'm not sure if they put them in different seasoned water or what. But they soak them because the seeds have alkaloids in them. And alkaloids are not good for our livers. So once you get those alkaloids soaked out, then they brine them. Some of them boil them, some of them brine them, some of them roast them. But they eat them on street food like a snack. You know, like we would get, like, you know, boiled peanuts in the South. You know. And then there's places in Spain and Portugal and even into Spanish Harlem in New York City that they rinse them, soak them, and roast them and eat them with beer. Kind of like beer and peanuts, I guess. Kind of like beer and lupin beans. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Anyway, the garden lupin, Lupinus profilius is what this one in our garden is. And that's the one you want to put in your garden. All right, I'm getting a sunburn, and I'm going to pause, go sit somewhere a little bit cooler, and tell you the story of this particular garden lupins that George Russell developed. It's a really cool story. I'll be right back. Hi, I'm on the back porch. I'm going to tell you the story about George Russell with those beautiful lupins that we had just talked about. It's actually another day for me because it was so hot and my allergies were so bad I could hardly see. So I figured it was good to give up and live and fight another day. So here we are out on the back porch this evening. George Russell developed the lupins in Yorkshire, England. He was born in 1857. His parents, or his father, was a shoemaker, a cobbler. He went to work in the nursery about 10 years old, so that would have been about 1867, which was normal for children to go to work at that age. Whether we agree with it or not, a whole different video. Anyway, so he worked in the nursery industry from 10 years old up until his mid-early 50s. At that time, his wife had become ill and he had to be home to better care for her. So he started doing some independent jobs here and there. You know, come over here and prune my trees. Could you come over here? My apple tree has a disease. Could you plant these seeds? I need this shrub moved over there. You know, general landscaping work. They call it jobbing, independent jobs. So he went around and did those so he could still stop in occasionally and check on his wife, make sure she was okay. He was in the local area, no problem. She unfortunately died shortly thereafter, after him coming back home. So his neighbor, Mrs. Hurd, of course, obviously knew that his wife had passed away, that George's wife had passed away. So she approached him and said, you know, I will do your light housekeeping and your laundry if you take my son out with you, Arthur, on your jobs. See, Arthur was ill, and the doctors had prescribed fresh air, sunshine, you know, light, gentle walks through the countryside to help build his strength. No medicine, no pills, because goodness gracious, there was some nasty stuff going around, classified as medication back in the 1850s and on up. Oh no. Anyway, so George thought this was a good idea. You know, he wouldn't have to worry about cleaning up his house, which, you know, most men don't like to do, and not have to worry about his laundry, and he'd have some company along on his jobs. You know, he did just lose his wife, and I'm sure he was very lonely. So they went out on these jobs, Arthur and him, and, you know, kind of tagged along and went along on these jobs. Well, in about 1911, he stops in and goes inside the house of one of his clients. She invited him in. Whether she was going to pay him, I'm not sure. It doesn't say the event, why he was in her house. But he went into her house and happened to notice these wildflowers in a vase. They were just kind of just willowy, just all over the place. You know, they'd have a flower, a long stalk, another flower. very sparse, but for some reason they became very popular to the British cottage garden movement, if you will. They were actually imported, if you will, in the 1820s to Britain, and it became all the rage. Everybody had them in their garden. They loved the willowy, fairy-like appearance of them, very delicate, dainty. Um, but anyways, he saw this lupin, this blue lupin in somebody's vase, of his client. I can't think of her name right now. But of his client, and he immediately thought to himself, there's a plant that could use some improvement. Little did he know that little thought stirred up the rest of his life's work with that one little thought. So, of course, as days go by, he's thinking and he's thinking, and I know you guys as gardeners do the same thing. You think and you think, especially January, right? December, January, you start thinking. So he's working this through his brain of how he'd come about making improvements to the plant. He decides to do the giant leap and just do it. So he has these two allotments. Allotments is a term that British and British Commonwealth countries use for a gardening space, a space where you can do whatever, like a yard. If you ever see his house, I've seen a picture of it. They actually have a plaque outside his door. But you see his door opens up right to the cobblestone. There's no sidewalk, no grass, no lawn, no front yard, road, right there. So you had this allotment so you could plant your garden, whatever, okay? So he had one allotment for vegetables and one allotment for flowers. And he sold the surplus vegetables that him and his wife, or he didn't eat, or whoever, I'm sure he shared some of, like we always shared tons of zucchini, right? I'm sure he probably had either sold it or, obviously I'm thinking he shared with Mrs. Hurd. I don't foresee him not sharing with Mrs. Hurd. But anyway, so he had all these vegetables, and he had flowers in the other one that he would sell the flowers. Once in a while, he'd, fresh bouquets up and sell the seeds, the plants, whatever. Well, he finally decided to jump in with both feet and doing this lupin improvement. He wanted to do it. So he went and got a bunch of seeds. He got seeds from the Lupines polyphilius, which we have today, which is what he hybridized. He also got a few from Brazil of the tree lupin, a little bit taller, stronger plant. Got some from, I believe, in Germany and some other places. So he mixed all the seed together and just threw them out in his allotments. Well, he planted 5,000 seeds per allotment. 5,000 per allotment. That's 10,000 seeds. This man was on a mission. Okay, so as these plants are growing and he sees a plant that does not have the traits he's looking for, he pulls it just ruthlessly, just go through these plants. Don't want them to pollinate, don't want their pollen to release, I don't want it. Pull them out. Okay, it's worse than a teenager on date night. I don't like this one. I don't like that one. Okay, can you tell I had 4 children? 3 of them were girls. Yeah, clothes flying everywhere. Anyway, so he was ruthless in that. So out of that 10,000 seeds he'd plant every year, he'd save maybe 200. Okay, 200 seeds. Now, I'll bet you anything, one plant will give you about 100. Okay, so that tells you how selective he was on these seeds. So over time, he started getting that tighter, taller growth, strong growth. Those flower stalks started to come stronger over time, more packed flowers with each generation. He was nailing it. For 30 years, he had his allotment going with these lupines. People would pass by and admire it, love it. Oh, can we buy your plants? Nope. Can we buy the seed? Nope. Wouldn't let anybody touch it. Wouldn't give it to anybody. Just him and Arthur, going about their day, with their 10,000 lupins, not sharing it. People would come from all over, nurserymen, come on, please, they're beautiful. They knew a good thing when they saw it. George was, nope, nope, ain't having it. Sounds like a little bit of a control freak to me. He felt, does it sound familiar to anybody? Yeah, me too. He didn't want anybody touching them because he felt that no one else knew what they needed, knew what was in his mind of what he was looking for. He didn't think anybody would take the care that he has. How many of you feel that way about your gardens and your plants? You go into anxiety when you go on vacation because your neighbor better look like water and not enough. Because if my plants are dead when I get home, ooh, yeah, see? He had the same attitude. We all kind of have the same attitude. Although I think some of us would share our seeds before the 30 years were up. But, you know, we're talking about George Russell right now, not us. So for 30 years, these people from all over would come to try to buy his seeds or buy his plants. He didn't want to sell them commercially. He didn't want to let anybody have them. Well, there was a man by the name of James Baker had been watching George's allotment and seeing these beautiful flowers, had heard stories and decided to come himself and look, and had been watching. He approached George. Now remember, it's 30 years, so George is about 74, 75, maybe a little bit older. Okay. So he comes in and says, George, I think you got a good thing here. And I'm so sorry. I felt that one coming and I tried really hard not to do it. But, excuse me. Anyway, so he comes to George, you know, you got a good thing here. I think I can help. These flowers are so beautiful. Okay, I'm ad-libbing here, obviously. We don't have a recording of what really was said, but I can imagine if he was able to convince George Russell, who nobody else was able to convince for 30 years, to turn over his plants. I think he was a probably pretty darn good salesman. But he was able to convince George to give over. Well, not to give over, but he convinced George to allow him to sell his plants commercially at his nursery. But he negotiated hard with James. George did not let it go easily. What he negotiated was, I want housing on your nursery property so I can be close to the plants, take care of them. I want housing for my assistant Arthur, who is now married and has a wife. So we know Arthur is with him. Okay? It also kind of helps prove my theory of how old Arthur was when they started, because he's now 30 years down the line and he's married. So he's a minimum of 40, I would say, at this point. So he had to get housing for George, housing for Arthur and his wife and any potential children they would have, and it be close to where the plants are planted. So he could keep control of those plants, keep the tight watch on them, and be able to take care of and get what he was looking for and maintain that. The first year, now remember, Baker didn't sell them the first year. Okay, he brought in the stock and allowed George to continue the breeding with the idea that he would sell some of the flowers the following year. Okay. Because, you know, these plants, some of them don't flower, especially now that he's got them, they're all hybridized. They don't flower the first year. Okay. So he had to give them at least a year. So their first year at the nursery, George and Arthur planted 5,000 seeds. Promptly ripped up 4,800 of them. Not good, not good, not good. Like I said, that teenage girl thing. Don't like it, don't like it, don't like it, don't like it. Gone. Okay? Gone. Can you imagine as a business owner, okay, you hire an employee and they take your whole stock, 5,000, you give them 5,000 seeds. They take your whole stock of 5,000 seeds and throw 4,800 of them away. But you see, James had been watching George and knew how George worked, so he left him alone. So they saved about 200 seeds out of that first year, 5,000 on the Baker nursery grounds. Continued on, it went bananas. Baker made lots of money. George was happy puttering around in his garden in the back with his beautiful flowers. Arthur and his wife were happy, and here comes a truck because I live in the country. It'll go away in a minute. Anyway, so, Arthur has a place. He's happy with his wife. They're all puttering around in the background. There's James Baker just making the money. Just making the money because everybody loved these flowers. Time goes on. About 1937-ish. James Baker convinces George to display these beauties that he made at the Royal Horticultural Society show. It would be shown under James Baker's nursery's name because that was the nursery that they grew it at and who to contact for purchase. And also, but George was also credited as the breeder. They won the gold medal at that show. People went insane. They loved it. Went absolutely crazy. People fell out all over the place. They loved this plant. There was a quote by, I read by one of the selectors or judges, if you will. He basically said that it was the colors and vibrancy was unlike anything he had seen. Basically, in 1937 terms, he was blown away. Or in common present terms, and yeah, you know what I meant. Anyway, I digress. So he won the gold medal. Makes you kind of wonder what George thought. He won a gold medal. Obviously, he had to share it with James Baker in the nursery. But it makes you wonder, was he happy about winning the gold medal? Did he feel validated? Or was he a little anxious about what were these crazy people going to do to his babies? It doesn't say. We don't really know what George really felt about that. But he continued working up until his death. I believe it was 1951. He was about 95, 94 years old. Arthur continued on. A couple years on down the line, continued on in the industry. It doesn't say whether he continued on with the Lupines. He does pop back in a little later on down the line. But with World War II and the after period, and then some of the changes in horticulture and how things are done, and with Baker's nursery now defunct, George's lupines were left to their own devices. And of course, because it's in their DNA, after a couple generations, they will revert right back to what they were before. Those willow-leaved plants that the flowers were far and few between on the stalk. So, about 20, 30 years after his death, the baton was picked up for lupines by a couple by the name of Pat and William Edward? No, where is it? Pat and Michael Edwards. Where my brain is today. Pat and Michael Edwards. They were able to get a hold of Arthur. They got interested in lupines. Got a hold of Arthur and tried to get these George Russell's hybrids back. They scoured seed catalogs of the day. They talked to gardeners who had them in their garden or knew of people that had it in their garden. Years of research went into this. They finally were able to, because they wanted to find out, the shape, the style, the color, things like that, so they can bring them back if they couldn't get the original, but they could get it to where it was close. They were able to find 152 varieties that they knew some information about their color, what they were, that kind of stuff, what their name was, when it was released, whatever. Out of that, they were only able to save 12
of those varieties that George Russell developed over the last half of his life, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, things in horticultural science have changed, and through Pat and Michael Edwards, they were able to bring those 12 forward and help introduce more breeding into those 12, and slowly started trying to bring some of those back. Another person that was instrumental in helping George Russell's lupins coming back is a former policeman by the name of Johnny Walker. He was a young policeman when George was starting to do his allotments, and he would walk past and see these beautiful flowers. And when they went to James Baker's nursery, he was able to purchase some and had some in his yard. So he was able to submit his seeds into the breeding mix with them trying to bring back James Russell's hybrids. And they were able to bring some more. And then it was slowly passed on to a lady named Sarah Conybeare, who developed quite a few more through, propagation through cuttings, hand pollination, things like that. And in the 2014 Chelsea Flower Show, she introduced the Beefeater, which is a bright red lupin. It is named after the red-clad guards of the London Tower. People went crazy over that one, too. Now, remember, George had developed one that was red, and everybody went crazy over, but we had lost that. Well, Sarah Conybeare was able to bring that back, and of course, through her, and she was able to name it what she wanted to name it, obviously, but we got that red color back. Another set of gentlemen were able to really focus in on the bicolors that George had done, where we had the standard and winglets a different color than the keel part of the flower. So they've made a lot of strides in that. So we are slowly getting some of those vibrant colors back, that George developed. He changed the horticultural world, if you think about how he took this plant that was just willowy all over the place, loosely packed flowers, only in one color most of the time, to these beauties that just wow in your garden. You can use them as cut flowers. They're great because they're a nitrogen fixer. Luckily, they have a tap root that breaks up compacted soil. They tend to be a shorter-lived perennial, which is good in some ways because then you can use that better soil for another plant to get benefit out of what the lupin did. But it is a gorgeous plant. We have a lot to thank George for all of his work that he's done, and to show that you don't always have to hand pollinate to get what you want. It just takes a little bit of time, that's all. Anyways, until next time, have a good week. God bless, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.